shoulder. Yep, it's right above
Oh, there
shoulder.
you go. Cool.
There you go.
I'm learning step by step,
Exactly. Your
as I'm doing.
progression.
There you go. All right. So, hey, welcome tonight. We got Morgan J Ingram. He's the director of sales, execution, and evolution at J Barrows Sales Training. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's start a little bit by letting us know, who you are briefly and what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So essentially, what I do on a day-to-day basis is traveling to multiple locations and training SDRs, AEs, and customer success on how to prospect effectively within whatever their segmentation is. So could be a hybrid of inbound, outbound, could be re-prospecting into accounts to land and expand. That's essentially what I do on a day-to-day basis. And my background is in sales and public speaking and doing sales development. So a lot of the content that I've created has helped me do what I am doing today. So on a daily basis, I'm actively training sales teams and their organizations on how to be more proficient.
Cool. What do you find the most challenging
in
terms of training salespeople? Is there like a specific industry that you find more challenging than others?
The challenging thing is keeping their attention. Training salespeople, it's like it's ADD as it can get. So you know what I'm saying? So there are specific industries, like if it's a more technical product and they're targeting security and architects and IT, that is a harder thing to grasp because it is a harder persona to talk to. But as a whole, the hardest thing about training is keeping everyone's attention and making it engaging and fun at the same time, giving them knowledge to be successful. That's honestly the hardest thing for training, especially if it's like 8 to 9 hours for a full day of training. Like, it's just harder.
Well, so what do you think actually people have the hardest time learning? Or what is taking them what is the most difficult for them to learn, you would say?
I think
that whole day.
I think that's hard, right? Because I think at the end of the day, everyone's different. Like I treat it as a sport, right? There's some people who are really good at shooting threes and there's some people who are really terrible at shooting threes. They could have gone to the same shooting camp for the past 3 years, but someone grasps it quicker than the other person. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, if it's a specific skill set, it's going to be different for everybody, right? Across the board. But I would say the hardest thing for anyone to grasp is being consistent. The reason that people aren't successful is because they're inconsistent. Like, if you fall off in consistency, you don't get the six-pack that you want, right? You don't get the results that you want. You don't hit the quota that you want. So if you're not consistent and you're inconsistent and you're not organized, everything's very sporadic and you don't get the results that you want. So if I had to lean on one thing, it's hard to have consistency from a one-day of training or from, even if we were there for like 4 months, it's hard to be consistent off of something that's new to you because it's new to you and you do not want to grasp it.
Got it. So on your LinkedIn profile, you're mentioning prospecting rockstar. Does that actually encompass consistency in it? What would you actually say are the skills or the attributes that make someone a rockstar?
Yeah, well let's talk to this point. This is important. So for you, like when you think of rockstar, what do you think of?
That's interesting. I come from a development background, so for me, it's the sort of like 10x engineer kind of talk that there is at the moment. So I'm kind of thinking they're like a 10x kind of sales person as well.
Mm-hmm. So I see it as like when I think of like the top athletes in the world, the top musicians in the world, it's the reason that they're called rock stars is they're consistent. Mm-hmm. They consistently show greatness over and over again, right? You think of like the top. People consider like the top performer like a Beyonce or something of that nature, right? The reason that she's on the top because she consistently always overperforms every single time. And so that's what essentially what that means there is that you're consistently performing greatness over and over again. Now, are there gaps where you don't and there are some days that you're off? Absolutely. We're all human. We can't consistently be at the peak of peak every single moment, but we can be high performing. High performers lead into inconsistency. They do the little things that create big impacts. And that's what I believe when it comes to prospecting rockstar, like that's what I mean by that.
Got it. All right, so let's do one step back and imagine, I'm new on my sales organization. I'm probably going to have an SDR position to get started. What are some of the key qualities you will look into someone like that?
If I'm looking to get into, like, I'm looking to hire an SDR.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is, what's your culture? And the reason I'm saying that is because everyone's culture is different. I know there's some organizations, they sell into a certain persona, they want a certain culture and they want a certain attributes of their SDR. So my answer actually will probably be different than a lot of people's, but these are the 5 things I look for when I was hiring SDRs. One is, are you coachable? And how do you determine that? There's certain questions you can ask to actually figure out if someone's coachable. You just ask them, hey, like, when's the last time that you've read a book and why? That means that if they're willing to actually read a book, that means that they're actually willing to take information for themselves, right? Like, ask them, hey, like, who's your mentor that you follow that's outside of your immediate family? That means that they listen to advice and they're actually seeking out insights to actually produce and get results.
That's smart.
Right? So I'm just giving you all just baseline questions to ask, but that's how I can figure out if someone actually is coachable, right? Have you been on a sports team before, right? That means that they're probably coachable. It doesn't mean they're always are, but they were on a team and they had a coach. So that means they probably were getting coached. So that means that, like, they're coachable to some degree. So were they a team captain, right? Those are a lot of things that I try to figure out. So number 1 is coachability, because if you're coming in an SDR role, you may have great skill sets, but that doesn't mean that you have the coachability to actually, like, listen to what I'm saying and actually execute. So that's a big thing. The second piece is I'm looking for high will. And so what high will means is that they're willing to push through when things are bad. So there's a alignment here of high will and high skill, or low will and low skill, or high skill and low will. So this goes back to my first point. So I always look for SDRs that were high will. If they were also high skill, that means that they were going to be amazing. But I'll take high will, low skill, because I can teach you skills. I can teach you what to do. I cannot insert internal motivation inside of you. I just can't do it. So that's one thing that I have to figure out is your will high? Are you willing to continuously work hard internally? And I don't have to force you to do that. The third piece is, have you faced struggles and adversity, and how do you overcome them? Right? So are you in the face of failure, how do you react? So in interviews, I would always ask people, hey, can you walk me through a time that you faced adversity and how did you overcome it? Right? You can't really finesse and make up that story. So in that, if you face adversity, that means that in this role, you're going to face a lot of rejection. So I know in talking to you that based on what you're going to tell me, that at the end of the day, it's going to make it more applicable for you, and I'm going to get a better end result. Right? So that's one thing that I've tried to lock into to make sure that you're doing the right things. Number 4 is, do you have the right proactiveness to continuously seek information? And what I mean by that is, a lot of reps come in and they're very reactive to whatever the manager or leader tells them to do. So they'll do it. But are you actually proactive in seeking out other information, right? So are you actively asking other coworkers for advice? And this is not coachability, this is different, right? Are you actively asking the executives on where the business is going? Are you actively seeking out podcasts and books on how to get better? I know when I started off in my role as an SDR, I was always reading about marketers because I was selling to marketers. So I had to figure this out. So that's one thing that I always lean on people on, is that you have to have that curiosity. You have to have that innate ability to continuously move, because if you're not doing that, then everything's just going to go completely down the drain. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not what you want. And I hope that that's not what you want, because you want to be able to grow, right? And that's the one thing. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm really just looking people who are going to be innovative, and they're willing to try out new things. And when I say, hey guys, let's do this, they're not like, well, where's the proving point on this? I want them to, like, lean in and be like, let me try it. Because I would say a lot of the success that has happened in my career is that I'm willing to do things that people aren't willing to do, and figure out, do they work or not? And I'd rather be ahead of the curve than be behind the curve every single time. So those are the 5 things I look for in SDRs.
Do you usually find them all, or do you have to make some
If I find them all, I'm fired up. It's very hard to find all 5 of those in an interview, to be honest with you. I look for 3 out of the 5, and then I'm leaning. If it's 2 out of the 5, it's based on how their personality was, and if I have a good gut feeling. But 3 out of the 5 is normally what I look for.
All right, got it. All right, so let's imagine now you hire that person, you find that rock star or potential rock star. Yeah. What are you going to do next with that person in order for them to be successful in their role?
That is a very good question, but also there's a lot of variance, because it's depending upon, are they coming into a 200-person SDR team? Are they coming into a 1-person SDR team? Is this a very technical solution? Is it a very transactional SMB type of play? So it depends on what type of business I'm operating in on how I'd actually onboard that rep. Because if you're getting put into an enterprise only play, my onboarding is going to be different than you if it's just SMB play. If it's an SMB play, I'm going to get you to figure out how you can talk on the phone as fast as possible. Because SMB play, you're probably going to do 60 to 80 calls a day because you're living in a very transactional space. Especially if you were targeting people that are, let's say, independent contractors that maybe you're targeting plumbers or something of that nature. You're doing a ton of calls, so I have to get you prepped on the phone. But if you're enterprise, that means I'm actually going to have to do a lot more strategic work with you, right? And I got to figure out how you're going to do social selling and find those insights. So my answer to that question is ultimately if I had to give a broad answer,
sure,
is I always try to focus on, all right, for the first couple of weeks, we're going to put you through, this is what our company's about, right? Maybe for the first 2 weeks. This is what the company's about, right? These are our competitors. This is the space we play in. This is why we're building this. This is what we're doing. And then for the next couple of weeks, I'm really focused on the skills, and then I focus on the product. I don't like giving SDRs too much information about the product because then I feel like they think about it too much, and then they overthink the entire process and they actually can't schedule meetings. But some people will debate with me and disagree because they feel like they need to give them the product first. But just like I said, I don't know what organization you're in, so it's hard for me to give you that contextual answer, right? So my whole thing is, if I didn't know, I would do that exact process. 2 weeks of this is what the organization is. We're gonna get you to drink the Kool-Aid here, and then the next piece is let's figure out your skill sets, how to write an email, how to respond to objections, mock cold calling. Get you on some live cold calls for you to get certified. Once you're certified, we'll then teach you about the product as you have conversations. I don't want to overwhelm you with the product so that you think that you have to value vomit on your prospects, and then now we have terrible conversations.
Yeah, you're mentioning some objections as well. How do you train people for the different type of objections that they need to handle?
Yeah, so from an SDR role, there really isn't any unique objections. They're pretty much all the same. I'm not the right person. Call me in 6 months. I'm not interested. We're all set. I'm heading into a meeting. I'm in a meeting. All those things across the board that you're gonna get. So basically what we do is we write those on a board, and then we're like, this is how we handle them. And then we go back and forth with those reps to get them prepared. Ultimately, it's just practicing those back and forth. So when they're on the phone, it's instinctual and you do it.
Oh yeah, so imagine now I'm hiring my first SDR. I want to know how that person is performing. What would I need to do?
How that person is performing?
Yeah.
In what way? Like their call conversions, their emails, like their conversions to stage one to stage.
Let's explore that. What should I look at?
Yeah, so what you should be looking at is based on the derivative of what you're being comped on, right? Because if you're an SDR leader and you're being comped on just meeting set, then my answer is different. If you're being comped on stage 1 to stage 2 conversion, my answer is different. And if your reps are being comped on close 1, which I know is the case, my answer is different as well. Ultimately, I think the baseline of what you should be focused on is what I call the nucleus. And what the nucleus is a sensor activity that you should be focused on to get the derivative of the output that you're looking for. And what that means is that there are like 4 mains of methods of communication from an outbound perspective. So email, phone, social, and video. So you have those main 4. And then from those main 4, that is what you're looking at for your reps. So within a 90-day window, you should know what they're the most successful in. You won't know within 2 weeks. You just won't. But in 90 days, which is 3 months, which is what's the time actually for every SDR, manager, leader, executive, it doesn't matter. That's when you know whether or not your rep will be successful in 90 days. So in that, once I know, okay, in 90 days, you're getting more cold call conversions, I'm going to put more cold call conversion activities for you. I'm going to make you do more mock cold calling. I'm going to make you do more calls on your day-to-day basis. And I'm going to have all your optics of all the other channels mapped towards you making more calls. That's what I'm going to do. If it's more emails, I'm going to have to give you more accounts to go email based on your campaigns, etc. So those are things that I would be thinking about if I'm a leader. But what I'm looking at is email reply rates, email open rates, time of calls, how many calls do I need to make to get a conversation? cold call, actual conversions, and then the quality of those meetings. How many meetings are moving into the next stage? There's other things you can track, like video messaging and direct mails, but those are the baselines of normally what I would be tracking. How many meetings are you setting per week, per month, all that stuff? That's what I'd be looking at.
Got it. Morgan, do you have a view on the compensation? You briefly mentioned compensation. What's your view on that?
My view is it's all based on ACV, because each organization is going to be different on how they map that. So my view is, in the beginning, what I always tell people, if you're just building out an SDR team, you should just be competing on meetings completed. As the organization grows, you should be competing them on quality meetings. As the organization can grow, you can then comp them maybe on acceleration of stage or close one. But I think you have to grow into those comp plans as they go into it. Now, the follow-up question in people's head is like, okay, Morgan, what do I do or how do I comp people for each opportunity set? Again, I don't know, because that's going to be based on ACV. It's also based on ASP, average selling price, as well. So I don't know what that is for everybody, as like I said earlier. So ultimately what you're looking at is you have to backtrack on the allocation cost for the SDR, like how much is an opportunity actually cost when they set it. And then that's how you come up with your comp plans.
What do you think of the advice of, hiring 2 salespeople? Does that also apply to the SDR?
Like hiring groups?
No, always hiring 2, so you can always determine which one is doing better. It's a common saying when you're hiring like salespeople.
Got it. So no, I'm essentially, like, how I see it is that, like, if you hire one, you only have one baseline. Normally people, to answer your question, will hire like in groups. So like hire 3, hiring 4s, hiring 2s, just to see how the baseline of like who's performing where, and giving them the same exact training and seeing what happens. I think that's good to see if the enablement you're giving is working or not.
Got it. What do you see are the main challenges of going up market? Like, let's say, there is a SaaS company, they're doing pretty well with SMB, and they want to go enterprise. What are some of the things that you see are changing and where they need to put their attention to?
A lot of the times when that happens, the companies are fixing the inflection point. And what the inflection point is that they've been a majority inbound, and now they're being asked to go up market, which is outbound. And within that outbound process, there's a lot of gaps. The reason that there are a lot of gaps is because they don't know what to do. They've been inbound, and now from a mindset perspective, right? You've been doing inbound for 3 years. You've been getting a lot of inbound leads. You've been doing your thing. Now you're being asked to do outbound. You're like, I don't want to do outbound. I'm going to leave. Okay. Well, if you leave, that's cool. But like at the end of the day, you're still gonna be doing the same thing. You're gonna run against this every single time, anywhere you go, because Microsoft and Google aren't just gonna appear at your door. When you're going up market, they're just not. So you have to prospect them. You have to figure out what a multi-threaded approach is, and that's where people miss it. They don't have a multi-threaded approach in a campaign that leads to success.
Can you tell us a bit more about that part?
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially what you're looking at there is you're doing social, you're doing email, you're doing phone calls, right? And based on the personas you're doing, the messaging within those mediums are different. But ultimately what you're doing is you're having a multi-threaded approach across multiple things to make sure that you're doing the right way. And whether that's 5 emails and 5 phone calls and 2 social touches and 25 business days, or that's 4 emails and 6 calls and 2 social touches and 35 business days, that's ultimately going to depend upon you A/B testing to figure out what that is.
Just curious, did you actually find something that is working super well in outbound this year?
Voice messages.
Yeah, the one on LinkedIn?
The one on LinkedIn.
So how's that going for you?
Killing it. Love it. I mean, I got a 40% response rate, 20% meeting rate. So I'm running with it.
Is it on SMB or enterprise?
All across the board.
Across the board.
I've used it on large companies. I've used it on small companies. It's been massively effective for me, right? That's been for me, right? I don't want someone to take this 40% and start doing it and be like, yo, Morgan told me 40%. Like, hey, for me, right? All right. So it's been working for me. But now I've had other clients use it and they've been getting some great results too. But I have found it to be successful. I have a formula with it because some people might be asking. So 10 seconds in the first 10 seconds, I try to get someone's attention, right? So I'm like, hey, I saw this, I noticed this, whatever, right? Then in the next 30 seconds, I have the value proposition. Hey, this is the value prop, right? This is what you need here. And then in the last 10 seconds, it's, hey, check this out, call to action. So that's my breakdown and my formulas. And that's how I think about it every single time. Because if I think about it that way, that's where success lies. And
And
so, yeah, the voice message for me has been the big game changer. And I'm telling people to hop on it. I think it's going to die within the mid 2020. So I'm literally riding it out as long as I can until it becomes a dead channel like everything else does.
yeah, it's in a sense, it's pretty much the same as cold outreach by email, but you cram it into that voice message in terms of the format.
Exactly.
Cool. I like that. Where do you see things going afterwards?
In like in terms of
Well,
just
sorry, where do you see things going after that voice message by LinkedIn?
oh, I don't know yet, man.
Mm.
I haven't really thought about that yet. I'm in the voice game right now, and I feel like the voice message is going to be the ride right now. I don't know what will be next. But when it will happen, I will be aware of it. But the voice message for me has been the game changer as of right now. I feel like that's just where we're at. It's easy to listen to, like you guys are on the
Yeah.
move, whatever. But I mean, I wouldn't say video because video did its thing like 2 years ago, and it popped for about 2 years, and I feel like it's kind of like at a normal level right now. I think I don't know. I really don't know what it's gonna be. I think when it comes up, I think we'll know what it is. I'm hoping that it's like holograms or something. That'd be pretty cool. But I don't think people will like cold calling holograms. I think that'd be crazy. But I think the voice is kind of where it's at right now. I think what will happen is there's gonna be something there's gonna be something within voice that's enhanced. I don't know what that will be, but I think it'll be something that's beyond the voice message, but it'll be a little bit more personable. And I don't know what that's gonna look like, but that's my thoughts.
It's gonna be deep fake with voice instead of being with
Yeah, maybe. I don't
with
know.
video.
Something like that.
There must be a service for that.
Yeah.
Hey, Morgan, you've seen a lot of different companies, and I'm wondering what is the sort of ratio SDR versus account executive, or what's the sort of like ratio you see in sales at the moment in SaaS businesses mostly?
I think the average is 1 to 1.5. I believe that's on average. I believe based what the studies that say. And I know there's obviously studies out there. If I'm wrong, you obviously correct me. But I believe it's a 1 to 1.5. I think most organizations try to get 1 to 1 directly aligned. But I know some companies are like 1 to 7, 1 to 5, right?
Holy
It's
hell.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but most of them are, the average is where you should be at as a 1 to 1.5.
And the one is the SDR or the account executive?
Yeah, so the SDR to the AE. So the one SDR to 7 AEs, or one SDR to 6 AEs, one SDR to 1.5 AEs.
Got it. Cool. All right, so we mentioned briefly hiring. What about firing? When do you know it's time to let someone go?
Yeah, I think that's a very emotional decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some people that you really believe in, there's some people that you don't. I think ultimately it's seeing, are they making strides for improvement? That's at least like in the team that I had, like there's only one person on my team that we had to let go, and it's because they weren't making strides for improvement, right? Hey, you didn't do well last month. It happens. Not everyone has a great month. I get that. Cool. But what are we going to do this month to get it better, right? And if you don't do strides for improvement, that's where, for me, red flag, like, what are you doing? That means you really don't want to be here. And I got to ask those questions, like, do you really want to be here? Is there something else you want to do? Because if it is, that's cool. I'm not going to be mad at you. But there are other people who want your spot and who will take this opportunity seriously. So, yeah, I normally just try to see within a monthly, quarterly basis where they're at. When I feel like they're not being consistent in hitting those numbers, in those metrics, that's when I start having conversations and asking them harder questions on, do you really want to be here? Which is not a conversation that anybody wants to have, but sometimes you just got to do it.
Got it. And then that ties up nicely to coachability. So you mentioned this is one of the key criteria for hiring. So how would you go about coaching someone?
I think what you have to think about is everybody needs to be coached differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think we definitely live in a world right now where I think the gap is coaching, like not practically doing it the right way. Because what ends up happening is you are a top AE, you're a really good SDR, whatever, and you become a manager, right? Cool, congrats, got a promotion. So what ends up happening is you treat what you did successfully to all the other reps. So, hey, if you don't do it my way, I don't care. Figure it out. Then that's what leads to firing. That's what leads to hiring way too many people, and it leads to dissension, and the ROI is cut off. It's terrible. It's not good. So my point to that is that that is the change, is that you need to be proactive and do it in the right way. So I know there's some reps I tell them, yo, you are doing terrible. You suck. Pick it up. And that's how I knew I had to motivate them. That's just how I had to do it. Now, there's some people, if I did that to them, they'd get emotional and they would not like me. So I have to do it a little bit differently. I have to ask them questions and get them to open up. So essentially how I did it is I proactively I called it the Batman hour, right? I literally would just be walking around the floor, like checking things out. All right. And if you needed me, I'd come to the rescue. If not, I'm walking around. I'm just checking out the landscape. A lot of managers don't check out the landscape. They're in the corner somewhere doing their reports or something like that, or they're looking at data reports, which is part of it, but you still got to be proactively like seeking out what's happening, right? If I see a gap in your process, I'm going to do it, right? If you tell me, hey, Morgan, this isn't working, then I'll go do it myself to figure out if it works. Like I made cold calls with the reps. I did video selling with the reps. I helped them handle objections. I wrote some of their emails. Like I still was in the trenches, even though I was a manager, which I feel like what happens is that a manager, you prop your feet up and you're like, oh, it's chill time. And like, that's just not what you need to do. You're not going to be successful that way. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But essentially, how do you coach? It ultimately is asking people or getting the data before the one-on-one. Like, okay, what are your goals? This is what you hit last week. What are your goals this week? What are you looking to do here? And like, what are you looking to accomplish here? So I had like a whole structure of how I did it. So in the first 5 minutes, I would always ask you like, how is your weekend, or how's your day going, or how's the week going? On a personal level. I got to understand you on a personal level, because if I don't know what you're going on personally, then that's probably why you're not hitting quota. Maybe your girlfriend broke up with you. I don't know. Maybe your dog's sick. That's probably why you're not performing well. So we need to have that conversation before I have a conversation about data. All right. So if you're doing good, fantastic. Then in the 20 minutes, it's the breakdown of, all right, hey, last week, this is what you did. This is where you're on track to hit for this month. And then this is what you told me where you wanted to be at. And then I asked, how do you feel right now that you're tracking? I want them to talk about how they feel, right? Because if they're naive and say, oh, I'm killing it, and you're not, I mean, like, the numbers don't say that, right? So, like, I just want to know where you're at before I tell you where you're at, right? Yeah, Morgan, I know I'm struggling. Okay, cool. So these are a couple of things that I noticed that you're struggling in, right? They acknowledge it, so now I'm gonna diagnose them, right? Hey, this is where I see the gaps. This is where I actually listened to a couple of your cold calls. Here's a couple of things we can work on, right? And then from that meeting, in that 10 to 15 minutes, we diagnose. And then I'm like, hey, here's something I want you to learn. Like, here's something I want you to do differently. There's one adjustment I want you to make. I think the biggest gap that managers have is they freak out and they're like, oh, I want to give you all this information. But really listen to the rep. Do they want you to help? Do they want you to listen? Or do they want you to coach? You got to figure that out. So once I know that in that 20-minute lane, then the last 5 minutes for me is I ask them, hey, what are your goals for this week, right? And if they say, hey, I wanted 3 opportunities, I would always ante up. I'd say, okay, cool, you're going to hit 4 this week. So the goal with that is I always would ante people up. I want to hit 5. Okay, you're going to hit 6. So ultimately, reps would come in and be like, all right, Morgan, I'm going to be the number 1 rep this month. All right, cool. And then all my reps basically wanted to be the best. But they told me that. I didn't tell them that. The biggest problem across the board, and I had this as I struggled with the manager when I first started, is I wanted to tell people what I wanted out of them. I want my reps to tell me what they want out of themselves, and I'm going to coach you to get better than that every single time. So obviously a lot to unpack there, but you have to be proactive with your coaching. You got to know how people want to be coached, and you have to figure out when they don't want to be coached or they don't want help. They just want you to listen to them. And you also have to know how to set up an organized one-on-one so it's a continuous coaching process and you're continuously pushing them.
So yeah, so we're talking about management practices here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see any practices that people think, that's a good practice where in fact, you know that this is not a good one?
It's a good question. I would say they're just habits or bad habits or things that have been put in place that haven't truly either been thought out, or it's just like, we're going to do it and test it out. Like, I would say the intro of, again, a lot of people will see success with this. I mean, some people see success with this. You might not, whatever, but like, how you doing today? Like, I just don't like that intro, right? I just really don't. And I used to use it because it just, every other rep says that. So when you say how you're doing today, they're going to think you automatically know it's a sales call, and it just leads to a bad conversation, which I don't know. I don't think you guys want a bad conversation, right? So I just don't like that. I don't like I like to connect with your network, and then a novel pitch, right? A lot of reps do that. I think that's a bad practice. So those are things that, like, how I see is, like, I just think they're just bad practices as a whole. And I don't think they're really effective. I don't think they're help. I think they're off-putting to a very certain degree. So, I mean, those are things I see. I see very long-winded emails that are marketing emails, right? Putting all your value props on one email when you need to do it one by one by one. So those are a lot of things that I see and processes that can be fixed, and I think that are broken. And I also think that, like, from an inbound perspective or when you're calling somebody, hey, did you check out the webinar? Did you actually go to it? When we all know that people don't, if they signed up for it and they didn't attend it live, they definitely didn't check out the replay. So it's just like, you shouldn't even go down that lane because you already know it's going to be bad habits. So those are just things that, like, I see that lead to that distinction across the board.
Is there anything that you wish more people knew when you actually come to their company?
People knew, like, about outbounding, about just, like, training in general, the reinforcement, like, what way do I wish they knew about what?
Thing that has shocked you the most, you know?
I think it's the fact that there's just a lot of stuff that I think collectively we sometimes learn within a profession that most people have just never heard before. And I don't think there's, like, one thing I wish people would knew more about. I think there's a lot of things that I've just seen that I'm like, oh, well, I wish, well, you knew that. I wish you knew that. I wish you knew that. I don't think there is one thing. I think it's always curious to me how people aren't more proactive in a profession that has pretty much unlimited potential, such as sales. I think that's one thing that just, I guess, just shocks me a lot. Or another piece is, like, in the trainings, how people are hesitant to do certain things when maybe they're not doing that well, but they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Like, if you're not doing well right now, if the insanity play would be to keep doing what you're doing, you probably should try something different out, right? So I don't think there's one thing that I say, like, I wish organizations know more about. I just think as a whole, I just wish that it was just a little bit more of a open-minded set for being proactive in finding information. But that, again, goes back to the will standpoint, right? Like, you can't have everybody doing that.
Yeah, you're fighting against the resistance to change at some point.
Exactly.
So that's a good segue for what type of, you mentioned consistency, and obviously still having the ability to change and to adapt. How do you actually think the two can actually merge nicely?
I think that you have to think about it in this way. So 80-20. So 80% of the things that you do, they lead to results, baseline, consistency. 20% of the things you do are brand new. They're nets, right? So in that, like, the 80%, I know that this works, I'm going to continue to do it. And then the 20% is, like, I'm trying out new things, A/B testing. And with that, that allows you to be more effective in your 80%, and then allows you to try out new things that you may not think that are successful.
Cool. Is there anything you wish you knew when you started?
I actually said this on a video, I think a couple weeks ago. I did not do a good job of asking for feedback from people that I should have asked feedback from. And what I mean by that is, like, you can go ask feedback from people that are going to be, like, kind of soft on you, but I never asked feedback from people who I knew were just going to, like, drill into me to get me better. And so I have gradually gotten better at that. And I seek out feedback from people that I know are going to give me the best feedback, but it's going to make me really good at what I do. And so I wish I just would have owned that up a little bit sooner. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, we learn when we learn things and we execute, right? But that's, like, one thing that I think everyone just needs to understand, like, coming into it, like, don't be afraid of, like, the hardcore feedback, because that's what's going to make you better at what you do.
Do you want to add anything or something that we should cover that have not been covered yet?
No, I think we covered a massive breadth of content.
No, it's crazy.
You know,
you've been like answering like that. That was crazy.
I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing at the end of the day, I would say, whether you watch this session, you watch other sessions, and you continue to watch content, is, like, actually do the things that people say in the content. That's one thing I would stress. Like, you can watch videos on videos on videos, but unless you practice it and execute it, like none of this really matters at the end of the day, to be honest with you. So I would just encourage people, whether it's the 11, 12 people that actually do anything that we talked about today or any video you watch moving forward, like actually do it. And I credit a lot of stuff that I do, like I have this bookcase behind me, is because like I actually read stuff, I'll actually look at stuff, and I actually go do it. And if it doesn't work, like it is what it is. And if it does, like fantastic. But you have to be willing to try out things when you're like, hey, look, like I want to do more. You have to also execute more to get those results.
Understood. So
Yeah.
what books, you mentioned books briefly, what books would you actually recommend to people?
So this is just a baseline of what I'll recommend across the board. It's hard for me to give specific books sometimes because I know people want to learn different things.
Yep.
But one thing that I would say is Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. That book to me has been a catalyst, and I'm actually going to probably start reading it again. I would actually recommend that, especially right now, Jab, Jab, Right Hook.
Oh yeah, Gary V.
Gary V. I think people just need to get on that and realize that there needs to be some jabs here. I think there's a lot of right hooks that just come out of nowhere, and I think people have to understand like the jabbing effect. And then also another great book was The 15 Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell.
Amazing. And let's finish on your top 3 tips for okay. Top 3 tips from Morgan to improve in the next 90 days in sales. I know it's going to be very general, but what are your sort of like top 3 tips that people can apply right now after watching this?
All right, top 3 tips. One, this is a very basic tip for a lot of people, but you need to do this. Organize your schedule. Like, what are you doing on a daily basis? Like, if you don't know that, then you're missing out on a lot of stuff. I read a book and it says, hey, look, if you have an organized schedule, it leads to organized results. So the more that you're organized, the more benefit of results you're going to get. So that's like number one, like get an organized schedule that leads to organized results. I would say number 2 is find a mentor. Like that's very actionable, and it's not as hard as you think to do. Like really find a mentor. I have 4. So like it's helped me out a ton because I need advice on certain things when I'm just lost. I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's one thing that I would do. And then from an outbound perspective, what I would tell you all is get your emails down to 2 to 5 sentences. Outbound emails, right? And I'm not saying sales emails, so don't take my word for that. I'm talking about outbound emails, cold emails. Get them down to 2 to 5 sentences and carve them up by value prop. Do not send out novel emails and marketing emails. That's not what people want. They want the 2 to 5 emails that are condensed and short and straight to the point.
Really cool. On the finding a mentor, do you have any advice on how to proceed for that?
Find someone whose lifestyle or attitude or career is something that you aspire for. If that's not the case, then you shouldn't be talking to them. And you have to really vibe with that person. The mentors that I have, it's either I like the lifestyle they have the knowledge that I don't have, or 3, they have a lot of credibility in a space that I'm in. So you got to find out what that is for you. Reach out to them, email them, call them, whatever you have to do. That's how you get those mentors.
Amazing. Okay, so if people want to find more about you, where do they go?
LinkedIn, Morgan J Ingram, super simple. And the YouTube channel is the SDR Chronicles.
All right, so on LinkedIn, we're going to get an invite and we receive a voice message for Morgan back, right?
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Morgan.
You're welcome. Absolutely.